So one of the new features that you get with, or that's been introduced with the beta, is grid lines. So if we open a big script to check this out, let's open PowerBot and have a look at that. So there's a new button here for grid lines, and there's a couple of options: temporary grid, global grid, um, temporary guide, global guide, and indentation guides. So the temporary guide, if so, the temporary guide shows up at the current position of the cursor, the blinking text cursor. So you can see it's running right up and down there. And I believe that is the Control-Shift-G shortcut that it's showing there. So if you wanted to quickly see what lined up with the start of these, Control-Shift-G, and you can see everything. So we can tell that must be a standard indentation because a lot of stuff's lining up with it. But this would be handy if, for example, you wanted to use non-standard indentation for something like a hash table. So sometimes you see people make their hash tables like this, and you'll see they'll go down a few lines. You might need help making sure that they're all lined up, so guideline. And it looks like Control-Shift-G is pretty easy to hit to do that on the fly as well, if you just need a quick reference to line some random pieces of text up. And that grid line is persistent until you either turn it off or you create another one or you close the editor. And one thing I'm not sure of is, can you have one in each file? Yep. So those grid lines, you can have one per file. Right. I keep hitting the wrong button. The other one, the next one I'm going to look at is Indentation Guides, and this looks very similar to something Notepad++ does. So you can see a grid line for a guideline for each indentation stop. So I have my indentation set to 4 spaces, so that'll be 1, 2, 3, 4. Yep. And it also, that drop down here, which you get by right clicking on the icon, gives you Indentation Settings. I believe that's also the exact same box there, but I don't know if they affect each other. So if we were to say set the grid lines to 8 spaces, they space out there. Okay, so it does change the global indentation settings. Yep. And the final guideline is global. Now, a lot of people, or the standard for the width of a script in style guidelines was 80 characters, and so if you wanted to help ensure that your scripts were no wider than 80 characters, you can put on this global guide and you'll get that red line the whole way down. So if you wanted to limit the width of your script for whatever reason, displaying on narrow monitors or having them easily viewable in a command prompt window, then that'll help you figure out where it is, instead of how I normally do it when I'm trying to limit my line size by looking down at the column over here, down the bottom right of the editor. So you can see if I scroll across that there's column 80, and that's where I'd normally cut it off. Now some style guidelines differ on what the length is, and I saw the other day people had bumped up to 160 now that we've got widescreen monitors and more capable shells and whatnot. So change that to whatever, and it looks like because of our font size, it's very long. So we could go for something in the middle, say 120. And we could decide ourselves that we want our scripts to be no longer than 120, and we would scroll down and figure out what we need to do to each line to shorten them. But personally, I'm not too worried about my line lengths at the moment. But I'm sure at some stage I'll work towards standardizing everything to a line length, just for completeness sake, I guess.